Hi, welcome to the second lesson in this little series, Take It, a guide to improvising and soloing. Last time we looked at the major pentatonic scale and we had a lot of fun messing around, improvising and finding that it was very difficult to play anything that didn't sound pretty cool. This time we're going to look at another scale. Not really a surprise, we had the major pentatonic. This time we're going to have the minor pentatonic. There are two really interesting things about the minor pentatonic though that we're going to discover in this lesson, and one of them is the key to playing blues solos. First of all, the notes of the A minor pentatonic, remember last time we did the C major pentatonic, the notes of the A minor pentatonic are exactly the same notes as the C major pentatonic. That's because the key of C and the key of A minor relate to each other. One is the relative minor of the other and one is the relative major of the other. They have the same notes in them. If you look on a circle of fifths, you'll find that underneath C on the circle of fifths is A minor, and underneath any note on there is the relative minor key. So if you were playing a G major pentatonic, and we talked about last week how you can work out the notes for these in any key, then you would be playing as well the notes of the E minor pentatonic. So that means we don't really have to learn a new scale at all. It sounds crazy that they're exactly the same notes, but of course what will happen is our band, our backing, will be playing the same chords as in C major, but in a different order, and the A minor will feel like home. So we won't be able to play the same patterns. They won't sound necessarily quite as good. We might have to think about starting on the note of A, whereas if we were playing in C major, we might start on the note of C, and maybe ending phrases on the note of A rather than ending on C. That's very simplistic, but what we're talking about is phrasing your notes and thinking of note patterns so that we also give the impression, just like the backing, that we know we're thinking about A minor. But if you're just noodling around, what will happen is you'll start to find things that sound better than others and you'll stick with those. So that's really easy then, isn't it? The A minor pentatonic is the same as the C major pentatonic. The only thing is, we can do a very clever, cool thing with the A minor pentatonic and any minor pentatonic. We can play in a major key. We can play over 3 major chords with our minor pentatonic. How on earth does that work? How can I play in A major if I'm using this note? It sounds wrong. It just sounds like it's... If I put that, that's surely not going to work. Well, it does, and it works because the blues comes from a musical tradition that isn't quite like the Western classical music tradition. It comes from African roots and it works by a different set of rules. And when we hear something that sounds bluesy, we spot it straight away. And what we're spotting is this different way of thinking about major and minor. A blues song, even though it might have 3 major chords, and the one we're going to play, we're going to do a blues in A, which is going to have A, a major chord, D, a major chord, and E, a major chord. In fact, we're going to play an E7, but it's still not an E minor 7, it's still a major chord. We're going to play over that using an A minor pentatonic, which means we will have notes that kind of clash with the chords, but these are notes that we recognise as sounding bluesy. Now those are notes you don't want to play over and over and over again for a long period of time. They are going to start to grate, but they are, in small amounts, really powerful. So remember, our A minor pentatonic is exactly the same as our C major pentatonic from the last lesson. So we have those same notes, that we learned in the last lesson. We're going to play our A minor pentatonic, which is exactly the same as our C major pentatonic, over the top of this A blues. watch out for which notes are the ones that sound a little bit spicy, a little bit out there, a little bit like maybe they want to go on somewhere else. And we'll look at a thing we can do to help that. But first of all, let's just put the track on and explore it. Sounds cool, doesn't it? There are certain things about that that just make that sound a little less happy and bright, like our C major pentatonic in the key of C. When we play those same notes over a blues in the key of A, even though it's not A minor, we're playing notes from the A minor pentatonic, and they just give it that bluesy sound. A couple of the notes were very interesting. You might have noticed I did this. I tried to avoid it, but I couldn't help myself. When I got to my C note here on the 3rd fret, I gave it a bit of a bend up. Now I didn't get all the way up to the next note. I didn't bend it all the way up to the next note, but I just gave it a bit of a push. And in a lot of blues, which walks the line between major and minor, where we've got a major chord, but the note that would make that major chord, that A major, an A minor, is the note we're playing, but then we push it as if it's heading towards that note, and it gets about halfway there, but then we move on somewhere else. So instead of playing something like this, which is just my open 2nd string, the 3rd fret of my 2nd string, my open 1st string, and the 3rd fret of my 1st string, I might go, you hear the difference? No bend, bend. I'm just pushing that one up, and when it gets about halfway to the C sharp here, that would be the right one for an A major, I bail out and go to another note in the scale. Another one we use in that riff as well is the G at the 3rd fret. Now that's not quite as tense, but that's the note that would make an A chord into an A7. And that is a sound that's very much associated with the blues as well. Now here's the thing. What happens when people solo is they often have a bit of a mixture of the two. The major pentatonic and the minor pentatonic. In the blues you'd probably stick with the minor pentatonic, and in a poppier song maybe the major pentatonic. But if you're playing something that's a rock and roll tune that isn't right out and out blues but wants a bit of that bluesy edge to it, or maybe you're playing a bluegrass tune and you just want a cool bluesy sounding lick in there, you can mix the two scales up. Now of course it sounds crazy saying we can mix the two scales up because they're both the same notes. What I don't mean is mix up C major and A minor. We're going to have to learn the minor pentatonic of the same key. So if we had the C major pentatonic, what would the C minor pentatonic be? Not the A minor one that's the same notes, but the one that's the same start note. And I'm going to show that to you now. The C minor pentatonic looks like this. C, then the third fret of the C string. Now that's one of our blue notes. That's the note that we would normally play in C minor, but we're playing this. A blues in C is going to be made up of major chords. So that's going to be one of our kind of spicy sounding notes. Then we go on to the second string, no open note, just the first fret and the third fret. Then we go on to our first string, no open string, just the first fret. That's that one that makes a C into a C7, so that's a kind of bluesy sounding note as well. And then the third fret, we're back to C again. So that's our 1 octave one. So let's just try that. Open, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Do it downwards as well to get comfortable with it. You've probably heard that. There's a little riff in I Shot the Sheriff. That's just going down that scale with a few little twists and turns. That's our C minor pentatonic scale. That's going to be played over our C blues, which is C major, F major, and G7. Before we put the backing track on though, let's extend that scale a little bit further up the neck so we've got a few more notes to choose. So we've had C open, E flat at the 3rd fret, F at the 1st fret, G at the 3rd fret, B flat at the 1st fret, C at the 3rd fret. So which of those notes can we get next? Well, the one that came after C before was E flat. Can we find an E flat? There's one at the 6th fret. So from the 3rd fret, the 6th fret is our next available note, and that is that note that's going to want that little bend on it to sound really bluesy. We can then go up from there 2 frets and we have an F, and we can go up 2 frets more and we have a G, and we'll stop there. So we've got and the ones to think about that little bend on are the 3rd fret of your C string and the 6th fret of your A string. They're both the E flat note that is the kind of the wrong note, the minor note against the major chord. Okay, take a second to just navigate your way around those notes. And I'll put on a blues in C. An important part of playing solos and blues is call and response. Try and copy me. Sounds great. And again, like with the major pentatonic, you're pretty safe playing any of those notes, as long as you don't just hit that note and play it over and over again over the chords. Then it will start to grate a little bit. Something I was doing there though, and I hinted at the end with the call and response, was measuring my phrases, taking my time. So rather than just going up and down the scale, I was thinking to myself, make little musical statements, little phrases. So I might go, and that's my little statement over that first few bars. Then it changes to an F chord, and I might find another little thing I can do. Or a cool thing will be to make the same musical statement but over a different chord, so I could do it again. But maybe finish on a different note. I could do very simple things. So think about people like B.B. King. B.B. King would frequently just play something like just a couple of notes. And that's the one, the 6th fret with the bend on to the C root note. That's really great. I mean, if somebody says to you as it comes round, take it, and you go, they're going to go, wow, that guy knows what he's doing. You've hit them straight away with a really cool sounding riff. So leave space. Think about little patterns rather than long lines, particularly when you're thinking about soloing over the blues. Now, I talked about combining scales, and this is one of those things where we can start to make our improvising a little bit more advanced rather than just running up and down the same scale. What we can do over that C blues is we can quite happily play our C major pentatonic scale, because those 3 chords all belong in the key of C major. They're our C chord, our F chord, and our G7, and we had those right back in the song we did in the first lesson when we were learning our major pentatonic. They won't sound quite so bluesy, but maybe you don't want a solo that sounds really intense and bluesy all the way through. Maybe you only want that now and again. So this time we're going to mix the 2 scales. Before I put the backing track on though, let's just remind ourselves. C major pentatonic, open 2, open 3, open 3. Let's just keep them in that first octave to start with. Once you get comfortable with it, you can start moving up and down the neck. C major, open 2, open 3, open 3, C major pentatonic. C minor pentatonic, open 3. So the first one we had, the major one, had the 2nd fret. The minor one had that 3rd fret, and that's one of those blue notes. That one that we like to have a little bend on. The major went open 3, and the minor went 1, 3, 1, 3, which means we can have our open note and our 3rd note if we want the major pentatonic, and our 1st fret note and the 3rd note if we want our minor pentatonic, or we could just mix them up and have 3, 1, open from our major one. That one's the same in both, the 3rd fret there. The 1st fret belongs in our minor pentatonic, the open belongs in our major pentatonic, and then we have our blue note at the 3rd fret, our 2nd fret from the major pentatonic, and the C that belongs in all of them. Now, rather than trying to play them all as one big scale, I would suggest that you maybe play a major pentatonic lick and then try and find a little lick, a little pattern that works on a minor pentatonic. I'll have a go, and then I'll leave the track running for you to have a play around. Major. how we can take something that sounds quite happy, but then we can have another pattern that does that. And you'll find in a lot of more middle of the road stuff, so more rock music and sort of pop rock stuff, where it's not really heavy blues. They just want to put one of those notes in now and again. That's one of the things that they'll be doing, mixing the major and the minor pentatonics. I hope you've enjoyed this. There's some great little things you can have lots of fun playing along with these. If you want to know how to play the minor pentatonic and indeed the major pentatonic in other keys, there's a little link to a video popping up at the top now which will show you a really easy, clever little way of finding the notes in the pentatonic scales using a circle of fifths. In the next lesson, we're going to look at what you do if the chord sequence isn't diatonic, if some of the chords step outside of the key. And that can cause us a lot of problems because a lot of the notes we'll be playing in these scales would clash with that chord or those chords. So that's for next time. But in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed it and I'll see you soon. Bye.